Beep, 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 beep. Welcome to the court of the EDI Jester. Hello, everybody. How are we? Here's an interesting one today, he says, which is, it's a comment. It's in the old Telegraph newspapers. And it's a comment that comes from Zoe Strimple. So I put the link in the Dubris to the article that Zoe's written. It's rather a good article. I liked it and I thought, yeah, this is a nice angle. I like the look of this and I quite enjoyed reading it. And I thought it might be a conversation opener. So I'm going to go through it with you and we'll see what Zoe's got to say. I think there's some interesting points that can be pulled out of this. Zoe is saying in her comment, we may have won some battles, but we are still losing the culture war. Zoe is a woman after my own heart. That's exactly where I think we are. Okay. Zoe says, I had dinner with a friend last week, a journalist who has been brave, bold and prominent in defending the rights of so-called TERFs, right? Trans-exclusionary radical feminists. I know who you are. Women who stick by their guns, in other words, that only biological women are women. Every day she takes on the terrifyingly aggressive world of trans activism, complete with death threats, misogynistic bullying and all. The day we met gender-critical philosopher and the former Sussex professor Kathleen had been front-page news. That sounds wrong. I'm going to read it again just so I get it right, okay? The day we met, meaning her and her friend, gender-critical philosopher and former Sussex professor Kathleen had been front-page news. Pictures were everywhere of her flanked by security as she made her way to speak to the Oxford Union. You may remember that marvellous picture of her. It wasn't even deliberate. It's not like they were going, right, let's do Reservoir Dogs, but it did look like it, didn't it? She's just so cool. You're so cool, Brewster. Or in this case, Stock, okay? Protesters tried to stop her with one trans, them, the name of Riz Posnet, staging a glue yourself to the floor of the chamber stunt. And there was a wonderful meme that said Kathleen brought the head of one of the trans activists to her meeting because all you could see was a stupid head above the table. Students yelled with impatience at the disruption and in the end Stock completed her talk to a standing ovation. There was Stock's eventual triumph over the anti-Stock students, so blindingly ludicrous as to hurt their cause. More important still, she felt, were Keir Starmer's recent second thoughts on supporting gender self-ID. This policy brought male rapists to a women's prison in Scotland and proved disastrous for Nicola Sturgeon. Has she been arrested yet? I don't know. So at least England, for the time being, it seems, will not become a haven, like Scotland, for men who want to go into women's changing rooms and hospital wards under the fig leaf of identifying as a woman. I must have looked unconvinced because she added that the trans cause had been taken up as a die-hard religion by many young people and that its tentacles had spread widely. And therein lies the rub. It is tempting, folks, this is great, through sheer fatigue. And in cases like my friend's, a kind of post-traumatic stress at the insanity and relentlessness of the battlefield over the past few years. To look on the bright side. So in other words, it's hard to look on the bright side because of that. If we say the side of reason and sanity is won out, then maybe that will become reality. But we haven't won. Arguing otherwise blinds us to the peril we're still in the fight to come. What happens at Oxford University has no bearing on what has already been set in motion and will take years and a huge cultural overhaul to reverse. In some schools in Britain, up to 1 in 10 pupils now say they are trans. Girls trade tips about the best breast binders. Many of us know parents with children who declare that they are the opposite sex and cling angrily to what they see as the progressive politics of this. Any attempt to persuade them otherwise is met with rage. This is about the uneducated, see. The insanity takes more subtle forms too, such as pronoun declaration, which is now commonplace in schools and beyond. Professional emails from people in industries that have nothing to do with the semiotics of gender, from publishing to geology research centres, now declare, my pronouns are. It shows how mad we have become that we don't consider Anna or Margaret from a book publishing PR department informing us in her email signature that her pronouns are she, her, just as absurd as someone signing off that they believe there is a unicorn at the end of the garden. The religious zeal of the pro-transgender warriors has even infected a country that ought to have other things to worry about. Israel. Abigail Shrier, the American author of the brilliant and impeccably researched book Irreversible Damage, the transgender craze seducing our daughters, is in Israel now for the launch of the Hebrew edition of her book. Hundreds of teams came out to protest the book. Eilert Kovo, a 16-year-old trans activist, went straight for Shrier, telling her, you are exporting murderous bigotry. You don't care about us. They had to be dragged out. then continued shouting their horrendously misguided interpretation of Schreer's book, which is very far from being transphobic propaganda, but neither Kovo nor the rest of Israel's indignant LGBTQ protesters or left-wing newspaper columnists seem to have actually read it. Why is that always a feature? They've never engaged with any of it. They just scream about it, don't they? They're all tap. Doolally tap. Doolally. Ooh, words for madness. You got any words for madness? Put it in the comments. Doolally tap. Round the bend. Fruit Loop. Come on, bring them on. The Dictionary of Madness. That's what we need. Right. Let me throw it at them. If they had read it, they'd know she has gained the trust of hundreds of trans people concerned by recent trends, not to mention trans doctors and psychologists, and cares deeply about the well-being of young people. It's a good article. I'm going to jump a bit, but you can have a read. Right, the sense that we are losing the battle for sanity goes beyond the trans wars. Here we go. This is the bit that caught my interest. There is the widespread ideas in the art and higher education that Britain is a fundamentally racist state entirely and still inescapably built on slavery. We have to watch the changing of building names over obscure links to slavery and removal of statues and the decolonising of curricula and museum exhibitions by minimising the greats in favour of obscure writers whose main claim to inclusion is their ethnicity. There's your equity. Today's climate is toxic and its effect will only be amplified in years to come, so I'm not optimistic. I see the small battles won as mere blips. The culture war, I fear, we have already allowed ourselves to lose. The only thing that wasn't mentioned in there really in that article by Zoe was the environmental extremist as well. Critical social justice, which is really what is being spoken about here, can be defined very easily. It is about the proliferation of power and oppression narratives in order to bring about the collapse of existing structures and to seek for and try to find oppression and power narratives in any system or structure, which means that once they get into an organisation, they'll finish the organisation. That's the whole mantra of critical social justice. They'll say it and they'll go, no, what we're just doing is interrogating the past in order to understand. No, you're not. You're a bunch of women in grievance gerbils. That's what you are. It doesn't matter. It's grievance. It's just grievance. Power and oppression narratives, grievance mining. And it's all come from the bloody social sciences and universities. Universities at the moment, vice chancellors need to be, strung up by the badoobies until they start bloody behaving and getting these people out. And we can identify who these folks are. And I think Zoe's right. And the battle is the battle might be won in some areas, but it's far from over. Far from over. I mean, critical race theory is vile. Once you begin to get your head around that, you'll understand how truly vile that can be. Because it is racism. There's no getting away from it. That's what it is. Racism. Pure, unadulterated racism. So, thank you, Zoe. I think that's a great piece. Go and have a read and see what you think. I mean, I suppose I have to ask the question is, how much do you think this is a wider thing? Now, we know the importance of getting these LARPing men out of women's spaces, out of women's sports, getting this rubbish queer theory out of schools, rubbish transgender stuff out of schools, But I'm very concerned about the middle ground here, where you go, there is a middle ground. There's no middle ground. Christ. Really, really, people need to start saying that. There is no middle ground. There's reality, and then there's sanity. Pick a side, right? All that, fine. But is this bigger? How much bigger does it go? Does it go right up to the WF, as I've been saying? Does it go to, pharma companies in America? Where are we? Are we all mad? Or is this some kind of agenda that's being pushed by some very powerful people, and in doing so, steamrolling and damaging others? You let me know in the comments, or please do the most important thing, which is share this on other platforms, and then perhaps let me know in the comments what you think where we are. See you later.